Hey, welcome, Metallurgists, to Wednesday night's album club. Tonight, the ones gathered before you, are going to be discussing Boston, Massachusetts, Meliah Rage's Kill to Survive. It's their debut 1988 album for Epic Records, who they did 3 albums for. They're formed in Boston in '87 by guitarist-songwriter Anthony Nichols. They've released 9 albums, and the band went on hiatus in 2021. So there's your quick right out of the gate information. But hello everybody, welcome. Thanks for coming around with us again. We've been throwing a lot of stuff at you lately. It's been fun. Jim, TJ, Alan, it's so great to see you guys.
Good to see all of y'all.
Hello.
So Jim, you picked this bruiser. What was your thoughts behind this one?
I wanted something that no one really talks about, that kind of fit the mold of, the show, but something that, it can be definitely polarizing, but something I also like. So I do like.
Very nice. You find that down in Florida?
Yeah, I found it in Florida. We got a decent shop right here called Park Avenue that there's a metal guy that works there. He curates pretty well. He brings in some good shit. So, but you got to jump on it. Like every Saturday, he puts it out, and there's people like waiting at the door when they open, and they go like run right back to the back and fill it up. So it's kind of it can be a little tough, but I got this one though. So.
Right,
the ugly side of buying in person. Yep.
Exactly. Yeah.
Especially, I mean, where you're at down there, they got a pretty solid metal fan base, so I'm sure the stores down there, people know what's on the shelves. It's the new stuff that they're diving for, the new releases or the new arrivals in the used bins and all that fun stuff.
Yeah. Used bins are perused heavily for sure.
Well, I guess before we dive super deep, I kind of jumped the gun with the information, but we have shirts available. You all know that. And someone did comment that they tried to buy a shirt and there was only smalls available. I went on the site and checked, and there's available all sizes. I don't know if he was just having trouble with his browser or what. So if anybody's having trouble with the shop, let me know. Everything should be up and running.
It's just like it's a pull down menu.
Yeah,
right,
it's a drop down. You click the arrow and the sizes pop down. He might not have seen that.
Might have missed
that could have been probably missed the pull down menu. But yeah, if there's any problems, let me know. But I've got some shirts printed up and they're all ready to kind of go. So there's not going to be waiting. And there's donations as well through Super Chats. And again, you don't have to, but if you do, thank you very much. It all goes back into the channel, which has been super helpful. But why don't we get into this? Let's talk about Meliah Rage's Kill to Survive. Jim, we will start off with you. Your first impression.
Well, obviously, it was my choice. I am a fanboy of this record. I will say that, when they released their first single for it back in, I think it was early '89, the album came out November '88. I was kind of like, wow, beginning of the end. I was writing lyrics like that, when I was 13 and, so I was already being judgmental 2 years later at 15. You know what I mean? I thought that was pretty bad. And but something about it, man, I think it was the guitar tone and just like the earnestness of what they were doing. I mean, it just really stuck with me anyway. Yeah, and I was able to kind of overlook, kind of the overused sort of metal cliche, if you will, about beginning of the end. We hear all that a lot, and it stuck with me. It was very catchy. And so I went, and I at the time it was the cassette. I bought the tape, and then I as I did a deeper dive, like the music, it just grabbed me more and more. Especially, we'll get into it later, but like the Bates Motel, the instrumental, Impending Doom, and stuff like that. But yeah, it was kind of one of those things that just stuck with me. Sometimes, for me, if what's behind it is sincere and it can kind of overcome some of the shortcomings. So even though I would categorize these guys as being sort of like a, second or third tier, sort of thrash, more like, a little bit of like American power / heavy metal kind of a thing with some thrash here and there. It's managed to stick with me, and here we are all these years later, and I still listen to it. So yeah, definitely a fan.
Yeah. TJ.
Yeah, so I remember these guys. I remember seeing this back in the day. I touched on it briefly back then. I never. It's always been a band I just always passed over. It always struck me as one of those bands that the majors were trying to capitalize on. You had all these other bands that were coming out and kind of hitting it big with this sound, and so hence the CBS Epic Records deal that they got. And this is the first time I've ever really sat through it, and while I don't hate it, I just, for me, there was just so many other things that were coming out at that time period that were like so much better, and you could see where they were trying to go with this band and what the band was really trying to achieve with their sound. And they wanted to be a contender, they wanted to be up there with the big boys. And so they were obviously being groomed for that. And I just, to me, I don't know. I mean, you had like, what the hell come out in 88? I think like, Blood Feast come out in 88. You had Forbidden come out in 88. I mean, there were so many other things that kind of walloped this record at the time that I was paying way more attention to. And coming back to it today, it's like, it was kind of cool to hear it and stuff again, but my first impressions haven't really changed a lot. I just,
All right, Alan.
Let's see. My introduction to the band was actually a song from their, I believe, second album, Solitary Solitude. And then I ended up finding this album on cassette back, had been earliest 90s. So not right when it came out, but probably 92, 93-ish at the latest. Really liked the song that I'd heard played on a college, metal radio station. And so when I found this, I was like, yeah, sure, I'll pick it up. It was just in a cheap cassette bin. I'm pretty certain I got both Kill to Survive and Live Kill at the same time out of that same used cassette bin. So yeah, I kind of knew what the band was going to sound like. And yeah, so there wasn't any surprise there. TJ is definitely correct about where this band falls. They're kind of second wave thrash metal band. They don't really come on the scene until around 86 or 87, when all the big bands have already been established for several years and thrash was already starting to blow up. They had the one demo come out in 87. They already had a single for Epic in 88, so they were picked up very quickly, by a label that you don't associate with heavy metal, really. So yeah, it definitely felt like this was one of those bands that was getting snatched up in the wake of success of bands like Metallica, Megadeth, Anthrax, and such. Your mileage with this kind of group as such is going to vary a lot. I think we all have some of these groups that we latch onto just for whatever reason. We hear them at the right time, or we're in the right place or the right frame of mind that we just like that one. But there, for everyone that we like, there may be two or three that are very similar in nature that never clicked with us. Meliah Rage is right there on the line for me. I'll readily admit they're not the greatest band ever. They definitely kind of feel like second tier power thrash band. But that said, I can listen to this and enjoy it. Like I said, I had this tape way back in the day. Hadn't heard of it or really even thought about the band in a long time. But when Jim picked it, I was instantly like, oh yeah, that'll be fun to listen to. And when I went back and replayed it over the past week, yeah, it was kind of fun to listen to. It's exactly what you expect. It's not reinventing the wheel. It's never going to make top 5 best thrash metal albums of all time or anything. And it's worth noting this album, while the band's put in the thrash category, you can tell pretty quick on first impression that they're not going for a really overtly heavy thrash sound. They still have a lot of that, 80s US power metal vibe worked in a little bit. They're very close to like early Law's Rocket, more so than classic Slayer or classic Testament or anything like that. They got thrashier on later releases. They moved more into traditional thrash territory. But this one, isn't just an all out thrash assault. And frankly, I kind of liked that balance. They're not doing anything amazing, but what they are doing, they're doing pretty well, and it's enjoyable. So that's kind of Kill to Survive in a nutshell for me.
Well, I think we're all kind of unanimous here.
Yes.
Unanimous.
Hamnanimous.
I always bypassed this album in the old Camelot Records. I looked at the cover. I mean, we'll talk about this in a thing coming up here, but there was no internet, so basically I used what label it was on, and Epic Records. It's not something I picked up, and my first impression, I'm kind of scattered here on how I want to approach this. My first impression of this was kind of surprised that I expected just a major label trying to pick up the thrash metal band, trying to capitalize on the Metallica, Megadeth, Metal Church, Testament type of popularity of the time, sign up anybody. I anticipated kind of a low rent thrash band, and I was very surprised how it was more power metal leaning. There are moments of thrash on here, but it's very much an Armored Saint meets Metal Church type of conglomeration with some little elements of thrash that pop in. But I was just afraid back then, looking at the tape, that this is gonna like fall into like a Wrathchild America, Dead On, big major label bands that got signed up that weren't really thrash, but they were just kind of like okay.
Would that have had you climbing the walls, Marty?
Yeah, I mean, I had Climbing the Walls back then, and that album had maybe 2 good songs on it, and since then I've reacquired that tape. Yeah, and the 3D album that came after, and there's some good stuff on that. It's just, the labels were just so damn hungry to capitalize on that Metallica money that they would sign up anybody. But my first impression was I thought it was okay. I didn't hate it. I didn't love it, but the more I listened to it last week and this week, it grew on me quite a bit. Do I love it? Am I blown away? I'm not at all blown away by it, but I started to listen past, my begrudging, it's okay. And I started to hear the songs a little bit better, and there's some good stuff on here. But we should get into this here. As the album dropped in 1988 during a very thrash-dominant era in metal, how do you feel this album sits within the climate of the time? Jim?
I feel like its timing was a little off. You know what I mean? Like Eternal Nightmare came out that same year. I mean, that was just an absolute crusher.
Right.
A stunning album for me. And and so the kind of theme that we're talking about here is really, this album is more kind of like American power metal with some thrash in it. I think that maybe Epic thought they were signing like a thrash band that was kind of contemporary with some of the Bay Area stuff, but they're really not. You know what I mean? They kind of harken more to like before then, more like an 84 or 85 era American metal band. And if they would have like put that album out like a good 4 or 5 years earlier, some of those lyrics that are pretty basic, I'll use the word, would have been kind of par for the course. Me and maybe a little not so I don't know, elementary, my dear Watson. But having said that, what on the flip side of that, because it came out during that really just I'll use Alan's words here, thrash attack. There's a lot of that going on, and I was loving every minute of it. That's why it stood out to me, because there was a lot of melodicism in it, because the tempos were slower.
Mm-hmm.
Mike Monroe's vocals were very clear, and though a little shouty, he was still actually singing, you know what I mean, but not in a super high vibrato way, you know what I mean. It was more of a low to mid range kind of a thing, and so all those kind of elements together, it kind of made it stand out to me. So I think Meliah Rage stood out to me for a very weird reason, because they were kind of a band out of time, if you will. But so even though I think that lack of timing may have contributed to them like becoming that second or third tier. Ultimately, for me, always looking for something a little different. That's why I ended up kind of gravitating towards it, just despite it's got some obvious flaws. But I'm everybody on this show here, and I'm sure everyone in the comments, things that we sometimes have to work towards liking more. There's something there, and we're like, just like I was when I first saw the video, I was like, but something about it kind of drew me in, and here we are, however many years later, 34 years later, what I mean, and I'm still listening to it. So,
Yeah.
So something happened.
All right, TJ.
Yeah, I mean, like I said before, for the time, I mean, the band really it's just kind of prototypical in a lot of ways. It's like there was a thrash explosion. All these labels were looking for these kind of bands, and and we remember bands like Faith or Fear or whatever. They were so totally being groomed to be
Faith
the
or
next
Fear is
big
another
thing.
prime example. These guys are very much like Faith or Fear.
Yeah,
time.
for sure. And if these bands had dropped these albums, and especially like Kill to Survive, if they had dropped that album in 83, 84, I mean, we might be having a different conversation about a lot of things. I mean, there's a lot of stuff going on there, but by 88, I mean, I'm over there jamming out to Release from Agony in 88. I mean, and it's like, what a whole different word. Yeah, so and so it's like, for the time, I mean, and it's right in there, and you listen to and the kind of cheeseball campy Bates Hotel, like, really? I mean, you couldn't do a Freddy Krueger song? Like, what? Wow. It was just kind of goofy, but it's still, I think for the time, that they put it out, and they're trying to be contenders, and they're out there slogging it out with the big leagues and stuff. I just think that it was just bad timing and what have you. But as far as the band itself, I think it fits right in with the whole slew of things that was going on at the time. Really, I mean, and that's kind of the summation of my feelings about that. Anyway,
Right on, Helen.
Yeah, as we've been mentioning, it feels like, kind of a second wave band. Jim's right. There sounds a little out of time, having more of a traditional metal structure with some thrash overprinted onto it. And yes, it definitely feels like a band that, got snatched up pretty quickly in, the wave of excitement going around with heavy metal at that time. But this is getting you a little late in the game for thrash. All your big bands are very established. The top tier is set even by 88. Cracking into that's not really realistic anymore. And other more extreme stuff is already starting to creep out by this point too. So yeah, it's a weird place to be in for a band like Meliah Rage around this time. Some bands in this style, like Metal Church, for example, were still doing well for themselves. It wasn't
They're kicking ass. They were great. Their first three albums are great.
Wasn't impossible for a band to do okay in this style, but it was getting harder. By this time, you were either a hairspray band or a thrash band, or you went one level deeper into the underground and you were, trading Possessed and Death demos and getting ready for all that stuff to explode really big. The stuff in that Metal Church, Laws Rocket, Faith or Fear kind of camp, that was becoming a narrower and narrower niche by late 88 into 89. Still relatively popular, but it was a bloated scene. Anytime, you have labels like Epic, let's face it, this is not the kind of thing Epic Records is known for going after. When you have a band like Epic, snatching up what looks to have been a relatively new band, this is not a band that featured big name musicians that had been like, featuring, former Megadeth guitarist or former Slayer vocalist or anything. These guys don't really have a ton of other notable band credits to their name. This isn't someone who had a ton of demos that had been on the scene for a while and just hadn't gotten the deal landed or anything. This is a label scooping up a band pretty early and rushing them on out, onto a market that's already very, very full. Not a bad thing. And again, at the end of the day, they made a fun record. I can give it a thumbs up, but it speaks to the time that the music is emblematic of the time, but it's maybe a step behind. I think, as TJ said, had this come out a couple of years earlier, probably would have fared a little better, and not as it was. It went relatively overlooked. Sure, it has its fans. A lot of folks in the chat have been commenting that they think it's a really solid album and an underrated one. That's great. That's good to see. But it never made any real splash at the time, and it never really had much of a chance to make a splash at the time. There was just too much other stuff making waves that for this to ever float to the top. Sad, but true.
Yeah. And I think to capitalize on what you said, how the top tier of bands was already set. I mean, the second tier of bands coming up, and the third tier of bands, you got bands like Sadist, you got bands like Forbidden, you got bands like Holy Terror, Dark Angel. These bands are way more lethal and caustic in their execution. Yeah. They're writing songs like every riff is like a swing of a fist, of a bloody knuckle. I mean, this is music that you put it on, it just detonates from your stereo. It's exciting. It's feral sounding.
And
it's amazing.
Hard to capitalize on. They're trying to capitalize on a sound that's already 4 or 5 years old. So Epic's like, oh hey, you guys can be the next whatever. It's like, well, their sound is already so dated.
Yep. And you face it. Look at, I mean, if we're gonna lump them in with like the first Metal Church album, I've never seen this band as thrash. I always saw them as a power metal band, a US power metal band, which is a completely different thing. Me and Alan discussed this at length. But that Metal Church album is so damn good. It's so well written. It's so heavy. There is power and excitement in those riffs and those songs. This here, they're a great companion to the band Faith or Fear. When whoever brought that up, kudos to you, because I've had that Punishment area tape forever, and every once in a while I put it in just to see, and it is still so fucking boring. It's so competent. It's so decent. It's produced so well, and it's just like, go somewhere, do something. And I'm not saying Meliah Rage can't get there, but they're very much in that straight ahead level. I mean, this Kill to Survive does have some moments where I'm like, right on. This is a cool song. And a lot of it, this album is good. I've listened to it probably 5 or 6 times. I enjoy it. I end up liking it. But I mean, if I would have bought this back in the day, it would have been sitting next to my Faith or Fear tape, and just not pulled out that often. You can tell these guys are in denim with the high top Nikes with the laces undone. They look like they could have been on tour with Gothic Slam and Faith or Fear and Wrathchild America doing the tour of America.
I think I'll bet Jim is right, just with something he said a minute ago. I wouldn't be the least bit surprised if Epic thought they were signing more of a thrash metal band, because they have the look and they have enough of the sound that if you and again, Epic probably didn't have a lot of metal scouts that were really in the know. I can see somebody from a big label who's kind of clueless about metal hearing a few snippets of Meliah Rage and thinking, that sounds like Metallica, sign them.
Right,
and something that actually wasn't quite what they expected without even realizing it. It's conjecture on my part, but that when Jim said that, so it's like, that would make a lot of sense. It really would. Because nobody was rushing out to sign bands that sounded like Metal Church and Law's Rocket and Faith and Fear. That they were looking for thrash bands, and this band has enough of a thrash veneer that that could have sold them to a major label.
Tim does make a good, but he's mentioned it twice now, and that is something to talk about on this album. There isn't a lot of really strong solos that jump out. In fact, I don't even really realize you ever noticing them, to be completely honest. I'm sure there were solos in the songs. They're so lackluster, but I mean, the songs themselves are still well constructed, well written songs. But let's get into the next thing. Let's just Yeah, let's discuss the music on Kill to Survive. It's the debut album on Epic Records. Does it feel like a major label outing? Jim.
I think it does because the production is really well done, especially for the era. I think it still kind of holds up. You know, for me, I love the guitar tone on this record.
It's
You
solid.
know,
It's a solid guitar tone.
yeah, it is. It just feels, it's enormous to me. It's really high up in the mix, which, I love that, especially for this style, and being, a guitar player myself. But, we're talking about how, the solos maybe aren't memorable. I would say, for me, like, there's plenty of like interesting things the guitars are doing, but they are in the context of the song itself. You know what I mean? For me, like, the instrumental, the Meliah Rage instrumental, like, that's one of the highlights of the entire record. There's all kinds of really cool, harmonies and melodies going along, and they're not technical, they're very simple, but they're tasteful, and for me, I'll take a well-phrased, couple of measures of two guitars playing a harmony line over somebody playing 1,000 notes a second any fucking day. I'm not impressed with whacking off on the guitar. I am impressed with well-chosen notes that I can remember, an hour later. You know what I mean?
Ace Frehley solos.
Yeah. And,
feeling
and
feeling
so
will win out over all the time.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, I agree, TJ. Yeah, for sure. Yeah, and so that's kind of what it is. And and so they kind of come in and out with these quick like melody lines that they'll do them together. Sometimes they're just doing like little, and especially in the instrumental, like there's a kind of a staccato guitar. It's like really an acoustic guitar rhythm, played on distortion but repeated, and it kind of it starts to drone, but in a good way. Like it kind of helps you kind of get carried off, and then they'll do like they do lines in and around it. Again, all very simple, but it's one of those things where every note makes sense, and so it stuck out to me for that reason. The single guitar solos, like on little hits like Enter the Darkness, yeah, very sort of like kind of throwaway, but when they kind of stay in the minor key, or they work together on the harmonies, the two guitar players, that's when they're strong, and they seem to choose their notes very well. And and those are actually my favorite things about the album is someone in the comments mentioned it as well. Rhythmically strong, I think it was Tim, and that is it. It's the rhythm guitar is very strong, and when they do come together on melody lines, that's kind of what carries it above like sort of the cheesy lyrics. TJ hit it on the nail on the head, like Bates Motel. It's really bad. But I could just kind of let it go. It's like if I kind of place the album back in the early '80s when it should have came out, before some moron on the 20th floor at Epic Records thought they were signing Metallica. I think it would have been perfect and not so bothersome. But when I'm listening to the music though, especially just paying attention to the guitar runs, and I really love it. And and that guitar tone is just for me, Marty, TJ will be the first to tell you I'm the kind of guy that bangs his head at a bonfire with his shirt off and a beer in his hand. And
it usually happens with Bolt Throwers for Victory playing. The shirt comes off, hits the ground, and the windmill, the Silver Vortex propeller fires up for the whole entire album. Drunk as a fucking skunk out in the middle of the woods. That's how it works. Yep.
I'm a slave to Bolt Thrower whenever For Victory comes on. Just hang it up, give me some distance. I think that's where Silver Vortex came from there.
Yes, it was. Yep.
But yeah, Meliah Rage, maybe not the entire album like I do with For Victory, but there's definitely plenty of songs on this that will put me in that phase. And and even though there's nothing spiritual or deep about this record, and several folks have mentioned in the comments, it's just a fun record, and sometimes you just want to have a good time, and I think this is good time metal for me.
Yep, agreed. TJ.
Yeah, so I'm not here to have a good time.
We know.
I'm here to shit in your Wheaties. Listen. No,
that's
man.
nothing new, TJ.
Yeah. What
No,
else
man.
is new? I call it
n-
Monday night.
That's right. Nothing. Just enjoy it. But no, man. I mean, it's as far as feeling like I mean, it to me the record sounds like I would expect this record to sound. It's there's to my ears there's a little dirt on the production, but it's still everything's where it needs to be. Everything's out there. They paid a lot of attention, a lot to the details on the record. They're great musicians. They're really good. They obviously put time into the songs, and really try to craft cool songs. And the sound is a little, the stylistically, the band is a little kind of all over the place. It looks like it feels like they're still trying to they got this kind of. That's right. They're trying to. That's right, Tim. I'm working on it. Get ready. Put my boot right on it. But they're trying to kind of find their way in the field of they got this kind of a traditional metal, like you say, like the metal church American style power metal, which I've never heard your discussion on it, but I totally get what you mean. When you think of some of the bands of that era that have that kind of sound, it's like they're not really thrash bands, but
Like Omen. Omen's a good.
yeah, sure. But
Who
but
else?
they're
Howl's
totally
Eve.
there's moments where there's riffs on there that sound more like traditional heavy metal stuff. Could have come off a Wasp record almost. I forget, like one of the first songs, and then they get into like just like through the whole song, because it's like, well, this is the cool thing to do, right? So so that's what they're doing. But to me it sounds like a product of the time. They had a budget. They worked with and by '88, the studios were a lot more adept at recording these kind of bands, and it shows. So it's definitely it definitely sounds like those bands. I still like the Faith or Fear record, to go back to that again. I mean, it's nowhere near as neat and tidy as that record. Oh my God, I have to make you pull that out. I have not heard that, because I used to own that too.
Yeah.
And I haven't listened to that in so long. It'd be kind of fun. Maybe I'll dial it up on Spotify or something. I do
like the song "Have No Fear" on that record.
Yeah, this got like one or two really cool songs on there, and then you have just entered the punishment area.
Yeah.
Oh my God, I can't even believe I remember that.
God never come back.
It is just like your interpretation. That is the most hilariously spot on, neat and tidy. You're killing me over here with that. But hold on, my contraption is fucking up. So anyway, but yeah, I think overall, it's a good sounding record, and as far as production and all that goes for the time, it definitely would hold its own with a lot of stuff for that time. There were some albums. It's like I listened to Release from Agony today at work, and it's like, God, the production on that album is terrible. It's so bad, but it's
bad.
I love that route. I worship this music on that record, and so it's just, but it's like, yeah. So they definitely the Epic put some money into them for that, and so for the time, yeah. I mean, I think it definitely has a major label feel for kind of a quasi extreme metal band for American label at the time, for sure.
Alan.
Yeah, it sounds like a major label release. It had a good production that y'all have commented on. It had other things going on in terms of a major label release. Apparently, the band wanted to put their song "Kill to Survive" on the album, and the major label interfered and didn't let them do that one. Apparently, they thought the lyrics to that song were too violent, so it got relegated to a live mini album separately. I am now wondering too if there was maybe some major label influence, because again, the second album in 1990 is noted as being thrashier. So maybe Epic realized that, can you guys sound more like Metallica next time, please? So
Right.
I think there are some
Right.
major label fingerprints around the album for sure. But yeah, it very much sounds as you'd expect it to from that day and time. They had a budget to work with. They got a pretty good sound out of it. They did not gyp the band in that regard whatsoever. They didn't pull something where they got to, oh, let's give you a really crappy studio, or let's just take your demo and put it out right away, or let's send you to some really crappy studio with a guy who doesn't know anything about it. So yeah, otherwise it worked out just fine.
I think it does sound like a major league. Did the part of the drums? I mean, everything sounds good. The Mike Monroe vocals into the mix. It's a perfectly produced album, and it's cool that a band that basically put out one demo got the corporate money machine behind them to put out such a good sounding record. And I think Alan is right. The band, the label probably heard the demo or part of the demo and said, "Wow, it sounds like Metallica signed them." And one demo really isn't enough for a new band that basically put a demo up where they formed. I mean, what kind of gelling is the musician at that point? I mean, it says it was formed by the guitarist songwriter Anthony Nichols. So he basically just put a band around him to work on his songs. I mean, that guy probably would be patting himself on the back pretty hard. I wrote all this music on this demo. We're on Epic Records,
Right.
But the music is good. It's solid. The solos could have been more predominant, could have been better. Mike's singing is solid. He is, he does the talk / singing style, shouting style. Is he a super dynamic singer? He's not. He's kind of offering up one dynamic, and that's pretty much it, which, he could have done some more screaming or done something to maybe break it up and pile on the intensity a bit more. But I think it's a well-written album. I think someone made the comment that it's been a grower over the years, and I agree with that. I mean, I obviously didn't hear it back in the day, but I think I like it more today than I probably would have back then, being a lot more enamored by all the bands I've already mentioned during the time. It would have seemed like an anticlimactic step backwards stylistically from where I was on the trajectory I was on musically. I was the super intense thrash, and death metal was starting to creep into my consciousness a little bit during that time as well, although I didn't really fully realize that until later. But solid record. We kind of talked about production already, so we're going to bypass that, but let's talk about least favorite songs. Jim.
I was on mute. Well, I already mentioned that, I love, the instrumental a lot. That's definitely a highlight on there. There's so much going on there that's really cool. There's even like there's one riff kind of in the middle there that's like down. I actually sort of ripped that off in one of my first bands a little bit. I loved it a little too much, you know what I mean? But no, it's great, and and Bates Motel, that little kind of staccato guitar line that kind of permeates Meliah Rage. It appears first in Bates Motel, in the midsection of Bates Motel. Then they use that and they build the entire instrumental around it. And so I really like those kind of two songs together as a whole. They work really well, lyrics aside. Though I'll find myself singing along with it. What is that one line? Oh yeah, I love that. Psychos are everywhere. Death's in the air. It's like, oh my god, dude. But also, I love from the thrash era, that kind of that fast triplet riff, that Exodus did really well on Pleasures of the Flesh. That that I love that, and so the song "Deadly Existence," man, I just love that. I can listen to that riff all day long. Someone just going, So I fucking love Deadly Existence for that reason, and also what's really cool on the chorus of that, Mike's, I think, is one of his best vocal performances. He's like, teach you the way, and I don't know what he's teaching me, man, but I want to fucking listen. I want to learn. teach us, Mike. So that song's fucking sweet. And then also for me, number 6, Impending Doom, or Impaling Doom rather. There's a hammer-on riff in that's like, it's like, down picking, yes, is it a little Neanderthal? I don't give a fuck. I'll I'll bang my head to it. I love it. Really good stuff, and I'm a sucker for hammer-on riffs. It's a really cool. Least favorite song? I think it's Beginning of the End, man. I mentioned it earlier that it was kind of their first video. Luckily, there was enough there for me to continue to explore, to get a little deeper into it. But yeah, it's kind of a really weak start to the album for what I feel is like way more awesome to come later. The other kind of like single, if you will, they made a video for it called Enter the Darkness, which was also more of a power trad metal song, not thrash at all. I actually like that song better than Beginning of the End. If they were going to start out with a slower tempo tune, I think Enter the Darkness would have been better. It's really simple, but it's just got a little bit more power to it. So if you just kind of like, if you're new to Meliah Rage and you're listening to it online or CD or whatever, just skip the first track, go straight to Bates Motel. and now I don't, liking the album like I do. Like I can listen to Beginning of the End, but ironically, I listen to it at the end instead of the beginning. See what I did there?
All right, Tej.
I'm kind of with Jim. The instrumental is definitely a winner on there, and then Impaling Doom. I think that's a pretty ripping song. As far as least faves, I think The Pack is kind of the last song, whatever. And then that Bass Motel. I don't know, man. I can't. I have a hard time getting over that whole. It's like, you're really singing about the Bates Motel. It's like, I don't know, man. I mean, I guess ooze, Hitchcock's scary. I guess, I don't know. It's hard. It's hard to get connect with that now. But I don't know. But overall, I think The Pack is probably one of my least favorites for sure. But the instrumental and Impaling Doom are definitely really cool tracks. The Meliah Rage song. I mean, it's almost like they could have put lyrics on that song. It feels like maybe they didn't get a chance to do the lyrics or something and just said, let's make it an instrumental. It turns out great. It's really cool. It works out. There's a lot of movement in it. The riffs all have really good character. Instrumentals can really fall flat with metal songs if the songs don't really have a lot of character in what they're trying to do. So I think they did a good job with it. So that's kind of my 2 cents on that. So,
All right, Alan.
Let's see. Favorite song, I think would definitely be Impaling Doom. Very cool one on that. Very heavy. Like it a lot. Least favorite. There's nothing I absolutely hate on the album. The Pack, I think, does run on too long, though. It's a little over. Yeah, it's what, 6.5 minutes. Every time I play that song, you listen to the first part. It's fine. Then I kind of zone out, and when I check back in, I'm like, oh, it's still the same song. This should have ended a couple of minutes ago. So I'll list that as least favorite because it just seems to go on a bit too long. I'll say but I'm okay with Bates Motel. It's a classic, Psycho reference, so I'm okay with that. I think it works okay as a song. Not my favorite, but not my least favorite either. Looking at the others, Deadly Existence never sticks. For some reason, I kind of gloss over that track when I'm listening to it. But yeah, so I'll stick to Impaling Doom and The Pack as a favorite and least favorite.
All right. Well, for me, my favorite is I'm basically cheating off of TJ's paper at this point. I really like the Meliah Rage instrumental. I thought out of all the songs, it was the most adventurous. It started off on a solid trajectory, but then middle of the song, it shifts off into something else a little bit different. And I thought it was kind of a cool twist. And, Mike's vocals are fine, but I don't really miss him on it. He's not laying down anything that's super that I miss. It's not like, the dude from Lost Horizon or something singing on it, or Darren from Sadist screaming his brains out. It's my favorite song as far as songwriting, most adventurous. I think Impaling Doom, that's the thrashiest song on the album. Straight up, starts right off the bat, kind of the thrash of the era. That's kind of what I anticipated this whole album to be completely honest, but it wasn't. I think that's a really solid song. It's towards the end of the album too, which is kind of cool where they put it. They're like, okay, we're gonna pick up our heads a bit on this one. Least favorite, the pack kind of drones on a little bit long, but I will say this album is paced. It's not a very long album, so it doesn't really overstay its welcome, which I enjoyed. It's not like that band we covered, the Norwegian band. I can't fucking remember their name.
Old?
No, the one TJ picked.
Oh, Leprous.
Oh,
Yeah, Leprous. I mean, yeah, longer songs and shit. It just, but anyway, no, it's good. And we did skip something here. I skipped over something. One of there was two reasons why I did not buy this album in the store. One, because it looked like a major label cash grab, capitalizing on the sound because it was on Epic Records, and the artwork. Looking at it today, it's not as bad as I remember it, but back then I look at the tape and be like, kind of cheesy. But I guess I wanted to discuss for a minute artwork of the time and the impact of image in days where the internet didn't exist. So you couldn't really preview a band before checking it out. We basically went on what label is it on and what's the cover look like. I mean, that isn't always a safe call because the 80s had some really crappy album covers on albums that were amazing. Creator's Extreme Aggression is a prime example of a shitty cover that's an amazing album. But what do you guys think about the artwork of the time? Maybe this artwork in particular, and what was your deciding factor when standing in the tape store back in the day? Jim.
So, as I mentioned earlier, my first experience with these guys was actually seeing the video from beginning to the end. So for me, I knew what I was getting into. And I picked it up anyway. But to your point, I would have passed this by because, as much as I like this record, this is not a good cover.
I mean, it's not a bad cover. I mean, it's a well enough drawn image.
Yeah. But in '88 we had Leprosy, man. We had Death, and we had the cover of Eternal Nightmare. So it definitely, I definitely think that there was, obviously more extreme things, but just maybe some more interesting things rather than a skeleton with a Indian feather thing going on, and until I found out that Meliah was actually an Indian tribe, that bothers me a little bit less, but no, it's not horrible. It's not great, but again, there's something about, everything that Meliah Rage does that they kind of just like get right up to the mark, you know what I mean, but not quite get there, but it's like just part of everything that they do, just not quite there. But for me, oddly enough, like it's emblematic of who they are. Like it makes sense in context of who this band is, and so I've grown to love it. I'm saying it coming a long way around. You know what I mean? It's definitely not something that, had I not heard them first, I probably would have been like, nah. Maybe these guys are like a heavier Dawkins or something. But having seen them first, hearing them first, then going back, it's gotten me more tolerant for it. But I would say in the context of the scene in '88 at the time, exactly, Marty. most of the things I bought were either because I read reviews of them in Thrash Metal magazine, or I just thought the cover looked awesome, or the guy who owned the record store in my hometown, he was a fantastical liar, man. He was horrible. He lied about everything.
Of course he did.
He lied so well about metal. Like I would just be like, you know what, man, I'm just gonna fucking buy it.
Rap Child America.
Yeah.
Awesome thrash, man. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly, dude. Yeah. Well, he did talk me into buying Lee Scars, and I was very grateful for that one.
yeah. That was a win. Yep.
Fucking listen, Dark Angel, but yeah. So for me, I think it's a win overall, and most of the art of that time, obviously, means a lot to me. It gets my come up. So.
All right, TJ.
Yeah, I mean, I'm kind of doing a search on, and it's like a lot of the stuff, it's pretty par for the course, really. That cover, the style of hand drawn pictures. I'm looking at Atrophy and
those album covers were bad. Yeah.
But
Violent by Nature is a super stupid cover.
Yeah, it's horrible. But even like, say,
people are mentioning in the chat like Acid Rain's Moshkinstein. I mean, I would never buy that album in a million years for that stupid fucking cover. Right. And with a title like that. Anyway.
But even like you look at like like the cover of Leprosy or the cover of Violence's record, even though those pieces are far and away, I think, are better pieces of art, they still kind of smack of the same style. They're kind of heavily colored, kind of just it's all kind of par for the course. You've got a few things that kind of stand out, obviously, South stuff like that, Seventh Son, but for the most part, these thrash bands were all kind of drinking from the same well as far as album covers go at the time. So, it's corny. I remember seeing it in the store at the time, and I think my take on it was a lot like Marty's, just like, what, because this doesn't say Combat on the back. This doesn't say Noise. This is, who is it? It's like, I don't know what this is. So, just kind of put it back in the rack,
Yep.
So for sure, the two albums. I'm sorry, I'm reading the comments.
I'm sorry.
It's okay, but yeah. So yeah, I mean, I don't know. It's not. I've seen there's again Violent by Nature. I mean that cover.
So dumb.
Bad.
It's a good album, but it's dumb.
But
that cover was it like the little baby with the metal face and,
with the skull face mask over it? Yeah, playing with the truck. Yeah.
Just good times, just great stuff. But ultimately it's compared to some things, it's not a terrible cover, but it's a little cheese. There's a little bit of cheese whiz on it, but it's I think they're trying to develop a mascot. They wanted a character, like so many of these bands try to do. So that's kind of like, oh, we're gonna put a headdress on a skeleton and whatever.
Well, I guess it makes sense now that Jim let us know what the name means. So that's makes sense with that. But at the time, I didn't know any of that crap.
No.
All right, Alan.
No Wikipedia.
No Wikipedia.
Yeah, I think what TJ just said about probably looking for a mascot figure rings very true. I've always assumed, because this same character shows up on the cover of the Live Kill release that came right after this, if I remember right. So yeah, you can see them wanting to have their own version of Vic Rattlehead here with, I don't know, Chief Thrash 'em all or something. But it's
smart copyright.
It's not an amazing piece of cover art, but it never bothered me either. It's got kind of the right balance of cheese about it. It is very emblematic of the times. Thrash metal through the mid and late 80s, unless you were Slayer and Metallica, a lot of those bands, they went for these, these very, like TJ said, bright color palettes that had kind of a cartoonish approach to them. Some of them got a little too silly, but even the Ed Repka stuff, has that almost comic strip kind of or comic book art kind of vibe to it. Lots of thrash bands did that. A lot of Anthrax's artwork has that same kind of slightly goofy, cartoony vibe to it. So it's not unusual at all in those contexts. The one thing that actually always stood out to me the most about the cover in terms of being a head scratcher was why the band logo had the red, white, and blue motif. It's like you're kind of doing a Native American thing going on here, but then you've also got the kind of patriotic color scheme going across your logo. Were you trying to make sure everybody knew it was an American Indian? I don't think anybody was going to be confused on that point, but so that's one that there's no songs on here that are like really overtly patriotic. They're not doing something like that Joe Starr did with Burning Star in later years. So that was always the thing to me. It's just like, I wonder why they use that particular color scheme for the logo. That's always floated around in my brain a lot more than why did they have.
They're from Boston. They had to slip in some USA.
Maybe that's as good an explanation as any.
Right.
Yeah. Who knows what was up there? Maybe they just the color showed up good on the background. I have no idea. But very much a product, what you'd expect at the times. Again, I already kind of knew what the band sounded like before I bought this, so I didn't have reservations about it. Would I have bought this blind if I didn't know what the band sounded like? If it had been cheap, I might, the kind of thing that I used to at record shows, you would find stuff like this in a box of used LPs, and it'd be like $3 each or 4 for $12. Had I found it under those circumstances, yes, I would have rolled the dice on it. Would I have paid, the $9.99 or $12.99 for a new cassette tape of it, standing in Camelot and not knowing what it sounded like? Yeah, probably not. I probably would have found something else that looked a little more exciting or appealing compared to this one.
Yeah. Okay. Let's wrap this up with Judgment. Final thoughts, Jim.
Well, obviously for me, my choice for the week, and I really love it. It's just something that puts a smile on my face. It's not going to change lives. It's not going to go on any GOT lists or whatever the hell. But it's a fun listen. It's definitely fucking metal, and there's some gems on there. There's like little bright moments of what I we'll call it Bostonian originality, with their arrangement choices and stuff like that. That bring some energy to it. And what I like about it is that American power metal, with thrash, and weirdly, as like unoriginal a lot of like the individual elements are put together in that package of American power metal with thrash, it's kind of unique in that way. And so for me, I think it's something I'm always gonna have. I've got it in multiple formats, and whenever I just want to listen to metal and just smile, I'll be playing this shit.
Right on. TJ.
Yeah, final thoughts. It's just one of those albums from the late 80s that just I don't care about. It's got a couple cool tracks on here. I glossed over back in the day. Jim's enthusiasm for it is, I have to appreciate, how much he likes it. Because I feel like the odd guy out, like, am I just being a dick?
Yes.
Like, am I just being?
You want the long form answer, the Cliff Notes version of that? Yes.
Listen,
fucking dick.
It's like, listen. I'm entitled to my opinion.
It wouldn't be fun if we all had the same opinion.
Oh, exactly. We're just giving you shit. Absolutely. No, it's all good.
But no, it's like I did not hate this record by any stretch. It's just it's just something I just I don't know. They're just not what. It's even like like with Metal Church. They were never a go-to band for me back in the day, and I've got friends. You guys love that band.
Oh, you failed. You failed there. Their first two albums are great.
I know, and let me qualify what I'm saying. In recent years, I've been kind of rediscovering the first two records, and I've been more so like, this is way better than I remember it, and been enjoying that band more. So back in the day, but again, this always goes back to how I was as a music listener. When I was when I was 12, 13, 14 years old and getting into metal bands, I would always fixate on whatever I was listening to at the time. So if I had like Release from Agony in my tape player, like I discovered that this is the greatest thing that I have ever heard in my life, and I will never listen to another band again until I find the next one, and that's just how I was for a long time. And I would just, I would fixate on these bands, and I would just, and then little by little, that changed, and now it's like there isn't enough time in the day to consume everything I want to hear. So, but going back to it's like, no, I don't, by no means do I think this album is terrible or hate. It's just, it is what it is. It's the first release by a band that was being groomed by the majors to be something that never really panned out for them. And whether they're a victim of timing or whatever it is, I think it's possible that even to say that maybe perhaps if they had been maybe the majors hadn't been involved and they could have had a little bit more of an organic progression as a band. Maybe they would have turned out, things would have been a little different for them. Fun factoid of the episode, for those of you who didn't read deep down into the Wikipedia, Sully Erna of Godsmack fame, Sully Erna of Godsmack fame once played drums for this band. So you can go ahead and look it up. And,
wait, no, that's wrong. That's wrong. No, he played for Wrathchild America.
No, he played drums in Meliah Rage for like 5 minutes.
Maybe he did for Wrathchild too.
Maybe it's possible.
Now go away, TJ.
So you could go ahead, look it up yourself, make up your own mind, do your own research. It's fine. I just wanted to point that out for everybody. I feel like that's my role now is to bring it up, break out the tinfoil hats. Let's go.
So anyway, in the 90s, Metal Connection got us, on an EP in the 90s. There you go.
Okay, so
there it is.
I don't write Wikipedia. So
wasn't enough pictures on the page. I couldn't read it anyway.
Right. So ultimately, if I, grade this record, I don't know, C- for me, I don't know, somewhere in there. I know, dude. I'm sorry.
That's still passing. That's a passing.
Yeah.
All right.
I just,
You're up, Alan.
All right, for me, I'm kind of in between TJ and Jim on this one. At the end of the day, I'll give it a thumbs up. It is a fun listen. That said, it's not the most original thing ever. As Tim pointed out correctly, so it could have used a stronger guitar solo presence. The vocals could be more dynamic. It's it's a fun listen, but it is not an amazing listen for me personally. In terms of a grade, I'm comfortable in I would go B-. I think they did all right, but it's slipping down there towards a little more average territory. So we'll call it B- or 7 of 10, something along those lines. Whether it would have done better if it hadn't been on a major label or something, who knows? They might not have gotten a lick of attention if they hadn't been on a major label. A lot of the smaller labels were already moving towards more extreme stuff and running into other issues. The late 80s is when Metal Blade started having financial issues with switching over to CDs from vinyl a little too late in the game, and that almost completely fucked them over as a label. So who knows? I don't know if anybody would have picked up Meliah Rage at that point or not. But yeah, they did their thing. Other fun trivia fact buried in the lineup of Meliah Rage is Bob Mayo, who played bass for Wargasm for years and who has an excellent heavy metal blog. Don't know if he still keeps it updated very often or not, but he's had a lot of really interesting articles posted over the years on his own blog. So, yeah, Bob was working with, more than one of those sort of Massachusetts area thrash bands over time. He wasn't on this album. Bob didn't play with them until Death Valley Dream, which was, I think, their 96 album. So they've got alumni from a few other acts here and there in their ranks.
Right on. For me, I like this album at the end of the day more than I did the first time I heard it. And it's a grower. I liked it a lot. It's one of those albums that if I see on tape or LP somewhere, I'll probably pick it up if it's used and reasonably priced. Back in the day, I wouldn't have liked it as much as I do now. I'm more patient now, I think, than I was back then. When it comes to stuff like that, I'm really willing to put a little more time into something. And I think I was talking to Metal Mickey in his comment section on how, being older and being into this stuff for a long period of time, I find a quicker, easier connection with stuff that came out during my era, which is weird. I find more of a profound connection with older bands that I missed than I might nowadays with newer bands, which is an old guy, get off my lawn shouting at the clouds type of thing to say, but kind of true. I don't know why that is. Putting on this Meliah Rage, it sounds like my high school years. You know what I mean? It sounds very familiar. It feels like that worn out pair of Chuck Taylors that you put on that they got holes in the side and shit, but they just fit good. They feel good putting them on. It's kind of what this album kind of come off as. I didn't get around to, they've got 9 other albums. I did not get around to spinning anything after it. Alan says they get decidedly more thrashy as they go. That's right up my alley. I'm definitely going to check. Yeah. Carl, I was thinking aren't they from Boston area as well? That's another band. They're one of those bands. Their early stuff is pretty good. And I think their last album was called Ugly. It wasn't very good. They kind of lost the muse.
It was pretty ugly.
It was pretty ugly for sure. But, yeah, and as soon as TJ comes back, he's probably using a little boys' room. He is going to be picking our next album club.
I was looking for something. It's fine. It's perfectly fine. So apparently somebody was complaining we're picking German bands all the time. So I have decided that we shall review Johnny Touch.
Can't tell what that is.
There it is. Is that better?
Johnny Touch.
Better? Johnny Touch. Inner City Wolves.
Inner City Wolves.
They're an Australian band. Pretty cool.
I've heard the name, but I don't know anything about them, so that's cool.
What kind of style is it? Just wait and see, or is it like?
It's traditional heavy metal stuff. Very classic, just that kind of thing. So
cool.
Oh yeah, okay, that's where I've seen them. Yeah, they were a Shadow Kingdom band. Okay, I've seen them on the Shadow Kingdom site.
Yeah,
cool.
Currently on hiatus, I guess, but. I've only listened to the record once, so yeah. Speed,
okay.
Kind of, I suppose. Strikes me more like traditional heavy metal, but definitely they're definitely, I guess there's some of that in there too, but it's good.
It's the newest release too, which is cool. Well, it'll be a fun one.
Yeah.
Well, cool. That's our marching orders, and we will be back next Wednesday, Friday night. We got Metal Mickey and Jurgen coming on to do a epic keep or reap keep or reap.
Mm-hmm.
So get ready for that. It's going to be a fun time. I'll make sure the White Claws are stocked up and ready to roll because I'm afraid it's going to be a rough one. But thank you all, gentlemen, for coming. It was a lot of fun, and everybody in the chat tonight. Awesome, very cool, good chat tonight as always. We appreciate all of you guys, and we will see you next time. Anybody have anything else to say before we jump?
Everybody take care.
Many hails. Thanks for the comments, everyone.
Right on.
Love, luck, and lollipops.
Live, laugh, love.
Yeah.
God, we got to work on that closing thing. Live, laugh, love just doesn't do it.
Love, luck, and
Dream
lollipops works for
warriors.
Pinky and the Brain.
Yeah, that would.
We
Yeah.
report, you decide. How you like that?
All right, everybody. Cheers. Have a good night. We'll see you Friday.